What are my plans now that I'm throwing my reading life upside down? Great question. We're going to figure this out together. Honestly, I planned on doing my usual reading wrap up for the month of November, but I read 3 books because I was in a slump. They were all mysteries. One of them was good, 2 of them were okay, and I just didn't really feel like it was worth talking about. First thing I did when I was really thinking about redoing my reading life and revamping everything that I've been doing thus far is I thought about what I didn't like about this year's reading and what I wanted next year to look like. I just didn't want to fall through the abyss like I did this year. I didn't want to, get to the end of 2025 and think I did the same exact thing that I did this time around. So I wanted to put some things in place now to kind of set me up for success as the new year approaches. I just want to preface all of this by saying, I'm not saying because I'm doing this, you have to do this too. If you're fine with the way you were reading, that's great. I personally feel as though because of the video I posted last week, a lot of you maybe agree with me though, and so I wanted to share what I'm doing. First and foremost, the biggest thing I think I did was I unsubscribed from Kindle Unlimited. I realized that when I was reading books on Kindle Unlimited, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time I was just reading them because they were available. And I wasn't really thinking about what kind of book I wanted to read or what type of book I wanted to read. I was just scrolling through there and just picking a book, truthfully because it had a pretty cover. So while I do think there are some good things off of Kindle Unlimited, I know there are a lot of great books on there. For myself personally, to try and break this habit of just reading whatever because it was available and to get a number of books read in a year, I needed to go cold turkey on that one. So for now, if I want a digital book, I'm just going to either read what I have, buy the Kindle version, or utilize Libby from my library because there are a lot of great books on there too. The second thing I did, which I did talk about in last week's video, was I deleted Goodreads. I still have an account there, but for now, I'm not going to be tracking my books that way because for me, that was, again, something that when I was logging a book on Goodreads, it wasn't to say, hey, I read this great book. It was to say, hey, look at how many books I read. Again, I think there is some value for Goodreads, but I know myself and I know that if I'm tracking something on there, I'm just going by a number. And that's what I'm trying to avoid this year. I did create a new tracking system on Notion though. I'll kind of show you a little bit of it. It's nothing crazy. It has nothing to do with numbers though. That's the biggest thing that I wanted to focus on is I didn't want to be tracking how many books I read, just the books that I read, if that makes sense. So there's no spot for, oh, this is book number 100, this is book number 1, how many books did I read this year? It literally is just books that I read because I wanted a way to catalog the books that I read and also be able to search through them. If someone says to me, hey, have you read any good amateur detective books? I could say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I have. Here is this book. Here are some things in this book. Versus I can't remember a single book that I read. Let me scroll through my Goodreads. I also like this better than the ranking system, like giving a book 5 stars or 4 stars, because that's so subjective. And I also found while I was looking through my books this year, there were books that I gave 5 stars to, but it's kind of like, why did I give 5 stars to those books? I just gave them that. And then on the flip side, books maybe I gave lower ratings to, but I have nothing to speak for on that. I just wanted a way to keep track of the books and more so the ideas that I got from them, not this arbitrary star rating that no one really has the same system for anyway. You'll see there's only like 3 books logged on here, some that I'm in progress of reading, so that way I can put them on there. I know they're going to be on there, but this is a very obvious work in progress, and so I don't know if this is going to work the way I want it to. We'll see. I'll probably do an update in a few months just to let you know if it is working the way I think it should be working. Again, the biggest part of this is I'm not using it to track a number. This is not something I'm going to be broadcasting, being, like, oh, Susie read 65 books this year. I'm only at 50. I better pick up the pace. This is just like, hey, what books have I read from this point forward? What genres are they? What am I getting from them? What do I think others would get from them? And I think this is better too for when I'm recommending books. I can say, yeah, I've read these 10 books with this theme in them. If you like this theme, I think you'll like these 10 books. I think that will really help me more. The last thing I did, honestly, was once I finished the book that I was reading, I started reading A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens because it's Christmas, and I kind of wanted something that I knew was a classic, that I knew was old, just something that is a tried and true good book to kind of ground me and revamping what I'm doing here. When I started reading this, immediately, I just felt like relieved, and I don't know how to explain it, but I was so happy to read it. I was enjoying it. I didn't feel like I had to rush through this book to get to another book. I'm reading it very slowly. I'm reading about a chapter, a little bit less than a chapter a day. I mean, there's only 5 chapters in the book. This is not the entire book. This is a It's A Christmas Carol and Other Christmas Writings. I'm just reading A Christmas Carol, which I think is less than 50 pages, maybe 75, but I'm reading it very slowly because I want to enjoy it. I do want to do a video on A Christmas Carol, the book versus A Christmas Carol, the movie, because I kind of want to see if that has translated and if, you know, a classic book, a good movie does make, or if we're kind of ruining the story by making it into a movie. So stay tuned for that, and I'll kind of go through more of my thoughts on the book when I do that comparison. But overall, I can tell you that I'm very, very much enjoying it. And I didn't think I was going to enjoy it. I really thought I was going to pick this up and I was going to think, wow, this sucks. I hate reading old books. There's a reason, you know, no one reads these anymore. I mean, this has to be almost a brand new copy. It was really hard for me to open. I know that I'm one of the very few people who have taken this out of my library. I'm not saying this is going to be a channel from this point forward of strictly old books, but I definitely think they'll be making more classic books, will be making more of an appearance. It really is just going to be a different way of approaching things from this point forward. And so that kind of brings me to what's going on in December. So for December, I do have a plan of some books that I would like to read. There's only 3 of them, really 2.5, I say. So I want to finish A Christmas Carol. That's number 1, finish A Christmas Carol. For 2025, I already listed out what I wanted to read in 2025. I split everything into categories. I do have a video coming about that closer to the end of the year, so I'll talk to you guys about that when that comes. But I'm using December, kind of like I said before, as almost a prep month for that. One of the books that I really want to read in 2025 is The Way of Kings, because I personally feel like, to me, Brandon Sanderson is tried and true. His world building is fantastic. His characters are well developed. The storyline is good. The books end well. The series ends well. I don't feel like everything is rushed at the end. I feel like he really thinks about what he's doing. They just are, to me, very good books. I enjoy them. I enjoy reading them. And so he's a tried and true for me. That's kind of where I wanted to start also. So with Way of Kings, because I want to read that next year, I have a few things I need to read beforehand if I'm following along sort of in the Cosmere. And so the first thing I need to read is Elantris. But because I want to read Elantris, there are some short stories in Arcanum Unbound that I need to read first, specifically the 11th Metal, which I think I should have read before I read Mistborn, but it's fine. So I started reading it. It's just a short story. Very, very good so far, though. I'm not saying that, that's a spoiler. It's been very nice to go back to that series with those characters and just kind of get back into that world. So I've been really enjoying it. So 11th Metal in here, and then Elantris, and then I believe I'm supposed to read The Hope of Elantris after I read this, which is also a short story in this book. So really just 2 short stories and Elantris is my plan for December. And Sanderson's books are pretty long, so I don't think it will be hard for me to only read 1 book in December. But I think my focus here is I'm really just trying to slow down and think about why is it that I want to read these books. So with Sanderson, again, I know Sanderson, I like Sanderson a lot. I'm just going to work my way through some books that I want to read because I want to read them in 2025. So that's really my big plan for December. Finally, I just kind of wanted to bring us to a point that I've been contemplating on. I will be the first one to admit that prior to last week's video, I was reading books to read books, reading books to make videos on books, and just reading them super fast to either get videos out on those books or just wanting to make the number on Goodreads seem higher. I mean, I've read 67 books this year, which is kind of a lot. That's more than 1 book a week, which means I'm averaging just a few days for each book. Which on the one hand, you can say, oh, you read really fast and you must have a lot of time to read. And I don't. I don't have that much time to read during the day. Like, I'm talking 2 hours tops probably is what I'm reading, tops, on a good day, tops. So that's a lot of books to get through, which means I'm skimming through them. I know I am. I know I'm skimming through them, and I'm reading them super, super fast. And so I wanted to stop that. But because I'm going to be changing things up a bit with my reading, that also means I'll be changing things up a little bit here. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but I know that either A, there won't be as many videos because I won't be reading books as fast, or there will be some non-book videos mixed in. I really just don't know what that looks like yet. Or there might just be shorter videos covering only 1 book. Again, I'm not quite sure where this is going, but hopefully you'll bear with me as we figure this out together. Let me know what your reading plans for December are down below. And if you've thought about your reading plans for 2025 yet, I'd love to hear them. See you next time, and happy reading.